Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Sorry, I'm still getting over my three week bronchitis here. The purpose of this video is at least twofold. On the one hand, I'm using it as a kind of guinea pig experiment, so to speak, to get used to doing this. And I know that sounds a little bit crass, but the truth of the matter is that this sort of thing requires some trial and error. And that's exactly what I'm doing this evening. A couple of things about this. I've never done one of these recordings from my house. And I'm also doing this using new apparatus and new lighting and kind of getting used to how to present myself to my own telephone. It's a little bit weird. And I think it'll take some getting used to. I was noticing when I was doing this for another class just a second ago that I was jumping around too much. I'm going like this, and it didn't look so good. So I'll try to be more stable. And my guess is it will take me 4 or 5 or 6 times to get used to this. Okay, let me plunge into this because the course management system has just changed, and I have to do this in a different way. The approach into YouTube is a little bit different now, and I think I have to keep these shorter. Okay, so let me just get into this. What I would like to do, and this is the second purpose of doing this, that is to give you the possibility of hearing my own voice and my tone of voice in these crucial concepts for our class. What I want to do now is to very quickly go through the importance of Plato's Cave. So you hear it directly from me, and I'm going to cough every once in a while. I'm sorry about that. Sorry. Okay, so as I was saying, and as you were reading, the cave is broken into 4 parts. Okay, that is, the first part is the bottom of the cave. See if I can kind of do it with my hands. The bottom of the cave where the prisoners from birth have been sitting basically blind, very little communication with each other. That's the first level. The second level is the ascent out of the cave, and I'll talk about what that means in 1 second. Thirdly is the moment where they are out of the cave and discovering quote unquote reality, and then finally the return or the confrontation. Now, what I want to do, as succinctly as possible, is walk you through what Plato is driving at here. All 4 of these stages or steps or phases are of tremendous cultural importance. They have been commented on tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of times, I would guess. And they are a really important part of our whole culture. Okay, in particular, the bottom of the cave is emphasizing a portrait of everyday life, basically. And what Plato is driving at is that most humans, most of the time, for a lot of their lives, are prisoners of prejudice, convention, limitation. Now, that can sound kind of vague and not rigorous in the sense of, well, what do we mean by prejudice? What do we mean by convention? What do we mean by limitation? Well, Plato explains those things in the rest of his work. The cave is only a page and a half or 2 long. And here, I'm going to close my computer. It's sort of shining there. The cave is only a page and a half or 2 long in the actual text. And however, Plato wrote thousands of pages. And you wouldn't say that those pages are commentary on the cave. No, but the cave is like a single map of much of his thought. Now, there's a lot to say. I mean, Plato's very complicated, of course. And but the main points are that everyday life is extremely limited, and just exactly how limited is open to interpretation, just as Plato is critiquing everyday life, saying that it's based largely on convention and prejudice, lack of understanding, lack of curiosity. Individual writers, including Plato, push those ideas in various ways, and the extent to which you interpret each of those kind of determines your the kind of person and the kind of writer and the kind of philosopher and the kind of student or kind of teacher you are. And this is it's up to you to sort of decide to what extent we are imprisoned. But Plato sort of establishes this as the foundation. There's more to it than this, but this will get it started. Okay, so the bottom of the cave is everyday life. The ascent stands for two levels at the same time, and that is it stands for personal growth or education, depending on how you understand it, and it can be interpreted in both ways, and I think with equal viability. Okay, now the important characteristics for Plato of evolution or education, depending on which, and once again, how you understand that is difficulty, pain, and the gradual nature of it. And this, for our whole tradition, is very important because that's kind of the way most people, most of the time, see education and personal growth as something that is not easy, something to which there can be considerable resistance. You might think about our whole school system as based on overcoming the resistance of the learner. Now, not all cultures feel the same way about learning. Not all educators emphasize the resistance of the learner to the same extent. So, okay, that's the second phase. The third stage is the hardest to really talk about in this very brief format, but the idea here is that the learner or the person involved in individual development or individual evolution eventually gets out and beyond the illusions, conventions, and prejudices to see life as it really is. And in the cave, that's what the sun and the trees and the grass represent. Now, there's another element to this. That is to say, the bottom of the cave stands for perception and seeing things only with your eyes and not with your mind. Okay, this is part of the Platonism, the transition from a life of the senses, which are usually seen in a relatively negative way, or at least in a limited way, to the life of the mind, which is usually seen in a positive way. Now, the fourth step, remember, the first step is the bottom of the cave. Second step is the ascent out of the cave. The third step is the exploration of the realities outside the cave. The fourth step is the return to the cave, or the confrontation between the person who has evolved, the person who is morphed, the person who has grown, the person who has quote unquote seen the light, and the original prisoners who are still conditioned or determined by limitation, by sensation, by the shadows of their experience, or by their lack of curiosity. The main point that Plato is making here is a very important one. That is to say, that you might think that the person who is enlightened, the person who is grown, can easily explain to the people what life outside the cave is. But the reality is no, it's exactly the opposite. The enlightened person tries to persuade, to explain and persuade to the prisoners of the cave that what things are like outside and what reality is like. They resist. The more the enlightened individual probes and presses, the more angry they get, and to the point of being willing to kill the person who's there to enlighten them. Okay, I don't think it takes much reaching here to see the parallelism between the cave on the one hand, in the second place, Socrates, that we saw in the apology, and I'll be talking to you about that. And thirdly, Jesus. It's basically in terms of the dynamics of the narrative. It's the same thing. You could also say that it applies to Dr. King as well. That is a totally honest person trying to share knowledge, enlightenment about the way life should be, and being met by tremendous antagonism. Okay, and what Plato is saying is, of those four steps, in a way, the fourth one is the most problematic and alarming, because the whole question of the goodwill of most people comes into play. The next sort of level of interpretation is basically the problem of evil, and that is, do people not want enlightenment? Okay, I've hit 10 minutes, and let's see if this is going to slide up into YouTube. Thank you very much for your patience with my modest attempts to use this technology.